One of my subscribers, Justice for All, had notified me about this particular story. And usually I don't reach back and do stories that were so long ago, but they were adamant that I speak about this because I guess you can say the case about this particular story I'm about to talk to you about is still open. And they really, really, really wanted me to talk about this story. Like, they sent me email after email about it, and I said, okay, I'll look into it. And man, what I found is just one of the most horrific crimes I think could have ever happened in American history. So, what you see right now in this picture is two women. On the left is a woman by the name of Kimberly Cargill, and on the right is a woman by the name of Cherry Walker. Cherry Walker was a mentally disabled woman. She was 39 years of age, and she was brutally murdered by this woman, Kimberly Cargill. Now, Cherry Walker, she was not only was she like mentally disabled, but they said she was also an independent babysitter. So she had to have a pretty sharp mind, even though she had, I guess you can call it a handicap. I really don't want to call it that, but it is, in layman terms, it is what it is. But she was brutally murdered and pretty much tossed like trash on the side of the road, and that's how they found her. But it goes even deeper than that. But I'm going to go ahead and read this article that's coming from lifedaily.com, and it's really lengthy, but that just shows you how much detail this particular story goes into. It says, ex-babysitter found on the side of the road. Police uncover child abuse conspiracy. It's hard to trust people even in this day and age, the time of transparency and social sharing. Yet not so long ago, most of us were forced to rely on our instincts in order to weed out those in our lives who were either untrustworthy or dangerous. Perhaps because of the assumed transparency of the digital age, the skills that people once needed to use in order to take other people with a grain of salt have become somewhat weakened. Then, of course, there are just those who have never had that instinct to begin with. Now, with this story, it seems like a lot of stuff is just broken up into sections, so I'm going to read each section. Each section has like a paragraph to it, and I don't know how many sections it is. So the first one says side of the road. They found the girl on the side of the road. A passerby had seen something strange off the highway and had pulled over to investigate it before calling the police. It appeared as though someone had killed her, stashed her body in a remote location, and burnt her so badly that at first police officers didn't even have a way to identify who she was. What they did know from the onset was that Jane Doe was mentally challenged, was far from home, and seemed to have fought back against her attacker in some way. She had bruises consistent with defensive wounds, bites on her tongue, food, and an anti-inflammatory pill still sat in her stomach. Whoever she was, this girl had struggled greatly before she died. As to who she struggled against, that remained a mystery. Dental records soon identified the deceased as 39-year-old Cherry Walker, a mentally disabled though very independent babysitter. Those who knew her described her as an outgoing, pleasant to be around, and good at what she did. She made friends easily and had no enemies. If Cherry Walker had one fault, it would have been that she was far more trusting, some might say gullible, than your average person. Having found her body so far from home, police believe that she may have been taken out there in an automobile. It wasn't until much later that they realized the car didn't belong to any trustworthy-looking stranger, but someone that Cherry had known and trusted for a long time. Cherry had worked for Kimberly Cargill, a 45-year-old White House woman and single mother whose son needed a babysitter, but Miss Cargill was not by any metric a nice person. In fact, the reason that she even had Cherry in her car on that fateful night was that she had injured one of her children, and poor Cherry had been called to testify against her. Cherry had been upset that she even be subpoenaed, but knew that she had to tell the truth, just as everyone had always taught her. It was no secret that Cargill didn't want Cherry to testify against her, and when she heard that Cherry had already explained to a friend she wouldn't lie for her, she knew what she had to do. So basically, This woman was taking advantage of this woman's mental state, hoping that she would lie for her based on her mental state, because this woman, Kimberly Cargill, was abusing her child, and she wanted Cherry to lie on the stand. But when she learned that she wouldn't do it, that's when she had to get rid of her, so to speak. And so Kim Cargill called Cherry Walker and told her that she would come and get her and hide her. That way she wouldn't be compelled to testify because of the subpoena. Cherry trusted Miss Cargill, so she accepted the offer. They went out to eat, then drove along a country road, and that's when things get a bit murky. According to Miss Cargill, Cherry suddenly had a seizure whilst they were driving, and she died from that fit. After finding out that she was unable to revive her, Cargill then decided to get rid of her body. Obviously, suspicion would have settled on her as the main culprit, so she didn't have a choice. Or did she? After that, Cargill drove Cherry to a county road, doused her with lighter fluid, and set her clothes on fire. While it was perfectly plausible that Cherry could have died from a seizure at the time, future forensic tests would reveal that she didn't. Thankfully, they also revealed she wasn't breathing at all when she was set on fire. So this chick right here basically did all of that for nothing. This Kim Cargill, so basically it seems that Cherry Walker was, based on what I'm reading, and I could be wrong, but someone could correct me. It sounds like this condition that she was what she was going through at that moment. Had she not gotten any medical attention right then and there, she probably would have died anyway. But this woman got scared and pretty much took her out in a way that she probably would have anyway. As for Cherry's belongings, Cargill threw those away, even her former babysitter's beloved coin purse. She threw it out just as unceremoniously as she did Cherry herself. Afterwards, she got cash out of an ATM at a local Exxon. Not long after Cherry's body was found, police tracked down and picked up Kimberly Cargill. Cargill stuck to her story all through the ensuing court case, but the more she told it, the less it seemed to make any sense at all. Even if Cherry had conveniently died of a seizure a few days before her testimony, it didn't explain why she'd gone through such extreme lengths to dispose of the body. Meanwhile, her defense attorney, Brett Harrison, argued that if Kim Cargill was indeed as smart and manipulative as the prosecution was making her sound, then she wouldn't have made it so obvious that she was going to kill Cherry. Prior to the fatal drive, Cargill made a number of rather insistent calls to her and to the DA's office hours before the alleged murder. The charges brought against her were considered to be a combination of obstruction and retaliation. Eventually, though, they removed obstruction since it was implied and would only serve to confuse a jury. What she was actually guilty of was murder. Her attorney went on to inform the jurors there were two questions they needed to answer as far as her punishment was concerned. First, they had to decide whether Miss Cargill presents a continuing threat to society. The second question was whether or not the mitigating circumstances surrounding Cherry's death would have caused her to commit the crime. Brett Harrison argued that his client received life without the possibility of parole. He suggested that she would do well in a structured correctional environment and that she had a mental disorder that was not usually violent. Indeed, since she'd been jailed for the trial, she hadn't had any violent outbursts, not for 2 years in custody. Not being violent wasn't enough. However, you see, while Cargill was in jail, she called a male friend and asked him to remove an orange bicycle from her property. That bicycle would eventually be used in the CPS case against her, Child Protective Services. She wanted it to disappear, just as she wanted to do the same with Cherry Walker. The prosecutor, on the other hand, took a hard line on Cargill's crime. She chose to do this, he said to the jury. If you could do that choking and hitting your children, who wouldn't you hurt? They believed him, and in the end, after 9 hours of deliberation, the jury sentenced Kimberly Cargill to death by lethal injection. After the death sentence was handed down, Cherry Walker's stepmother, Ruan, came forward to address the court and her daughter's convicted killer. Miss Cargill, Cherry loved you and she loved your son. She didn't deserve the horrible thing you did. You took her away from the people that loved her. Oddly enough, even though Cargill showed no reaction at all when the punishment was read out, it was Mrs. Walker's victim impact statement that really hit her. When I saw my baby in the morgue, continued Ruan Walker's, her eyebrows singed. You took away my memories of her. I couldn't give her a beautiful pink dress. All I had was a black body bag. As if that weren't enough, she finished with a rather impactful sentiment. We don't hate you, she told Miss Cargill. We only have love, pity, and compassion for you. Jesus loves you, and he will forgive you. She added that there are no winners, there is justice. That's all that really matters. Well, that was a very interesting story right there. And I can see why Justice for All wanted me to talk about this particular story. All in all, what I gather from this is that this could have been avoided. This Kimberly Cargill chick, oh, she definitely deserved the death penalty. Now, I believe that this crime happened back in 2010, if I'm not mistaken, because they didn't put a date here, but I think it happened in 2010. And I think in 2017, they tried to appeal her or overturn the death sentence where she would just get the life in prison without parole, but it was turned down, and she's still up to receive the lethal injection. As of right now, as it states, she is still alive. They have not given her the chair as of yet because Justice for All basically said that this is still an ongoing thing. She hasn't been given the needle yet, but the death penalty usually takes a long time to do. I mean, look at what happened with the guy who killed James Byrd back in 1999. He just got the lethal injection back in April of this year, and he killed James Byrd back in the late 90s, and it's 2009. So you're talking about 21 years before he actually got the injection, and someone else was involved with that case, and he got it in 2011. So it takes a while when it comes to these type of things. So who knows when she's actually going to receive it all? Is that the best part about it is that her appeal to get it overturned was turned down, so she's still going to get it. So she's still in jail right now as we speak. But this is a very loaded case. I can honestly say I never heard about this case, but then again, it happened back in 2010, and in 2010, I was an undergrad in college, getting ready to graduate the following year. So that this type of story was not on my mind, especially also too because mainstream media wasn't didn't really talk about it. But I'm glad that they that Justice for All sent it to me so I can get an idea of what we were dealing with. This story right here is entered into a long list of other stories where you have palm-colored individuals such as this one who do heinous crimes. I mean, this woman was committed crimes against her own child, and then wanted this woman who was nothing more than kind to her, probably against her own better judgment, and kind to her child, and taking was a babysitter and whatnot, and wanted to take advantage of her mental state. I think that's what makes this story that much more insulting, because she took advantage of this woman's mental capacity that wasn't all the way there, and she just probably thought and knew that she would be able to do anything that she could wanted. She probably thought she was a master manipulator, but didn't know that Cherry Walker had a mind of her own. But like I said, this woman did all of that for nothing. They said Cherry Walker ended up having a seizure, and it could have been a seizure from maybe being nervous because she didn't know where this woman was taking her. If she just had the seizure and Kimberly Cargill just called the cops or whatever and said there's an emergency, my babysitter, she's having a seizure, we need help, she wouldn't be in this situation right here. But nope, all she could think about was herself, and the fact that she was a bad mother. She got scared, and then she practically murdered this woman. Now we would never know what Cherry Walker would have died from. Would have been because she had died from the seizure, but now we know she's dead because this woman set her on fire and then disposed of everything. So the fact that they tried to argue that she should, just get the life without parole and not the death penalty is off the table. And this happened didn't this happen in Texas? I want to say it happened in Texas, because if it did, they honor that capital punishment to a T. So we'll see what comes from this when the time comes. And we will go from there. And I'm sure that if I don't find out about it first, Justice for All will tell me about it if she when she gets that lethal injection. And she too, like the one who killed James Byrd, got the lethal injection, will get the violins. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments, and I'll talk to you in the next one.